is Mickey's salary is just too high. Like his salary expectations. I hope you're having a fantastic day today. Dave K here today with Mike, and this is DaveCasts, a whole new take on the Dave K content. First of all, I'd like to say thank you so much. If you are a returning subscriber here, thank you so much for being a part of all the adventures with me and letting you know what's going on here, trying a variety of different things, thinking about what excites us. And as I'm thinking about what I enjoy, how I enjoy sharing content with you, I want to try more of this hosting format style because there is something enjoyable about being able to share a look back with you, some thoughts on different adventures that we have, and just general thoughts that I have. And huge shout out to Mike here as well, allowing me to use his setup and taking the time to speak with me about such adventures.
Looks good on you.
Thank you very much. You might see similar content on Mike's channel as well. We did, I think, a review of the previous cruise that we did. We were talking about MSC comparatively to Disney. But today, I want to talk you through our view on the Holland America cruise that we went on. It was an absolutely amazing experience, and it was our first cruise to Alaska. It was our first time in Canada. It was our first cruise on the Holland America line. And again, it was fantastic. Overall, I absolutely loved it. Now, we are going to dive deeper into specifically everyone's thoughts, and I don't want to give too much away up front here because this will be an interview-focused. I'll do some one-on-ones in the future, but interview-focused style here with Mike. We're going to go over our thoughts on the cruise overall. So first of all, Mike, thanks for taking the time to join us here today.
I am glad to be here. First guest on DaveCasts.
First guest.
Like, this is an honor, man. I'm like privileged here. I feel so good.
Thank you. Thank you so
There you
much.
go. There you go.
Thank you.
The honor.
Exactly. So, starting it off, the very initial thoughts. First time in Alaska, Holland America, all of those good things. Just give us the highlight, the headline. What did you think of the cruise? It sucked, or like it was amazing? Just
Yeah, no, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was one of the best adventures like I've been on. Not just for the cruise, not just for Alaska, but when you combine all of it together, it was just, I tell friends, it's like, how was it? Like, did you enjoy it? I loved it. And I can, like, people told me for a long time, go to Alaska, go to Alaska. I don't know if people told you the same thing, but now that I've been, I really want to go back, and I can see why people say it, and I highly recommend it. I loved it.
Yeah. Love that. I'm totally on the same page as you there. I would say every feature was fantastic. The line was fantastic. The destinations were fantastic. Going to Alaska was fantastic. But also the route that we took was amazing as well, and not something you can necessarily get with all the different lines. So starting from the first point here, which is the Holland America line. Well, actually, let's take a step back even further. How many cruises total have you been on now?
I think this was 13, something like that. It was like 12 or 13.
Right.
Like that.
I think this would be maybe 5 for me.
Yeah.
So if you had to put this on a ranking scale, just overall, 1 to 13, with 1 being the best, where do you put our most recent Holland America Alaska cruise?
So the problem with ranking, and I was thinking about this question, is the fact that you're comparing destination,
right,
the ship,
holistic,
the experience, and of course who you were with, right? Like the not just being alone or something like that. I'm tempted to put this one at either the number 1 or number 2 rank.
Okay,
that's where I am, and I was thinking about this. I'm like, is it going to be number 1? It's either tied with number 1.
Okay.
Or is number 1.
Nice.
It was so good, it's hard to describe it.
Good.
Yeah.
We will take that.
Yeah.
What is the other one that it's potentially competing with for a first place spot?
For me, it was the Disney Wonder cruise we did together, where it was the first time, like we were just like experiencing it all for the 7-night, like our very first one, like you got the stars in your eyes, you know what I mean? That to me was like super special.
Right.
Because it was our first time. Like we'd never done a long cruise.
Right.
We'd never done any of this. So it's like that
special
nostalgia moment. Yeah.
So as I think about that being your other potential number 1, to me, that one's it's something you can't recreate. Yes. It's emotionally driven. It's based on the fact that it was our first cruise. Whereas I think this particular cruise is driven on a lot more of the metrics of this was the destination, this was the cruise line, and that is what made it amazing. So that's just something that I'm keeping in mind as you say that, right? The first cruise is, of course, amazing as well, and you can't recreate that. But this sort of route, it sounds like from a route perspective, from a cruise line perspective, this was probably in the top position, at least up there.
If it's not the top, it's up there. And the problem is there's so many factors. And I know we're going to cover a little bit of them today, but like you think about the food, and then you think about the entertainment, then you think about the destination. It's like, in terms of destination, this is an easy number 1. Like this just rocketed to the top position easily. Right. We've been to Caribbean cruises a bunch. We got some more planned and all that. But for me, this was number 1 in terms of destination. Ship, the size, the quality, like we're going to get into all this again, but it's like, that's also number 1. And it's like, there's so many other pieces to it. I love a lot of the entertainment on the Disney cruise ship, right? I love the stage shows, love the characters, love the food there too. But it's like there's so many factors just saying, oh my gosh, like that's it.
It was amazing.
It was definitely one of them for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, because I had the opportunity, and the one that comes to mind for me that I'm comparing with, and you may be surprised to hear the one in my head where I'm like, okay, destination-wise, because that's a big feature for me, being able to see so many countries in Europe, going to Netherlands,
No, I'm not surprised.
going to Germany, going to France. It was amazing. It's such a, for me, unique experience. I mean, that kind of felt like a first cruise because it was just so global, you know, it was so international, getting to just experience people who don't even speak English and them speaking 5 different languages on board, going to 3 different countries along the way. So amazing. And I would say that that's the other one that comes to mind for me in terms of up there, and that is primarily destination driven. Now, I think that cruise maybe did not have a lot of the same features when it comes to food and all of that as some of the other cruises we've been on, but that's beyond the point. Today we're talking about the Holland cruise, and I do think that the destination on this one was amazing, but it was also a whole package that other cruise didn't offer, right? With the food, as we were talking about, and with the smoothness, which we can dive into as well. So beautiful. Glad to hear we're on a similar page. Just absolutely amazing cruise. And you might be surprised with Holland America. If you're thinking about Holland America, you know, I think a lot of people say, you know, generally it's not as young of a cruise. I enjoyed that quite a bit. It's quieter, more adult-focused amenities. Again, can dive into all that.
100%.
But well, we can actually kind of get to that point from an initial perspective, which is what surprised you? What's something that surprised you the most about this particular cruise in Holland America?
Great question. I guess, so I heard about the food prior, and I know we're going to get back to that. So the food surprised me a little bit.
Okay.
But what really shocked me, what just like blew my mind, was the size of the ship. Because I didn't, you know, I knew, oh, we're going to a smaller ship. Okay. And that was as much as I thought about it. I didn't like go link to, okay, what's this going to change in the feeling of the experience? No. Soon as I like had gone through that first day, first 24 hours, I realized that the small ship experience was like completely different than even the medium, because Disney's considered like, you know, it's not the wonder of the seas. It's not these mega, you know, city ships, but it's medium. This one was small, and it was amazing. That blew my mind. That surprised me.
Right. I would say for me, the thing that was most surprising was completely unexpected stepping on board. And I totally am aligned. You know, I think it was very interesting to experience that small ship feel in terms of the crowds, and we'll talk about some of the food and all that. I believe, was primarily driven by the technology, the asopods, the smoothness on board the ship. And you've probably seen in some of my videos, in some of our videos, I have been not directly seasick, but usually get some way or another feel sort of ill on the majority of the cruises that we've been on, right? We were in an engine room one cruise, and that was unpleasant for me.
Is that the Wonder?
I don't recall which ones, but I think it was, yeah, actually. I don't
May have been.
Might have been.
So much nostalgia.
There was the engine room. There was the oxtail soup, which I think didn't sit right with me. I like tagged them all mentally as like different things. It's like, oh yeah, the oxtail cruise, and then the like super rumbly cruise where we went to.
We were by the engine room. It's, you know.
Was that engine room? I think we were in the engine room in a different cruise, but the rumbly one I recall was we went to that restaurant, the fancy restaurant. Remember that upstairs in the back? We're wearing the suits.
Oh yes, that was the seasick. That's when I was seasick.
Oh yeah, I think
that's when I was.
You had some of those as well. Some of those experiences, and we looked out on this ship and saw whitecaps, and I was surprised after I like put 2 and 2 together. Like I didn't think about it for the longest time, but I never got seasick. I never felt ill like at any point on this cruise, which was, in hindsight, a rarity, which it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. But then, Mike,
to be clear, like not virally sick,
right?
You're talking about like the motion
sickness.
Right?
There's a variety of things.
Like
Could be the
food,
food sickness,
whatever,
right? A variety of things. Right. Motion, food, engine room placement. Those, smoothness.
Yes.
Smoothness, I think, probably being a driving factor, which could be the
yes.
engine, it could be the seas, but it's usually probably a combination of engine and seas, you know, food, etc. And servings. This is interesting as well, right? The servings that Disney gives you, and we have a tendency to jump into these larger servings. Well, maybe that just happens in general, but again, asopods not on any Disney ship to date. They're bringing it on the new ship. It hasn't started yet, right?
No, Wish is out.
Yeah. Okay.
Wish is out. And
just
all the new
out.
ones just
that was
came
the
out.
Summer, right?
No, it just came out. Yeah, it's been out for a few months.
A couple months.
Yeah,
okay,
a couple months.
Right.
But yes, you're absolutely correct. Every other past ship has been standard engines.
Right. Which is why I just assumed I would always kind of feel not great on cruises. And I'm like, I started being like, with the cruise thing. And this ship was a 2008 ship,
2008,
right?
yes, 2008.
Again, did not even connect the two. And then when we saw them in the crow's nest.
Yep.
And you were showing me, oh, yes, that's what this is. I'm like, I wonder if that's why I haven't noticed any sort of seasickness, you know, any smoothness issues. And you're looking outside and you can see. And there were points we felt the rocking of the ship, but yet it was smooth rocking of the ship. Like it went with in a way that just worked. And for 2008 ship, that was completely surprising to me. So, absolutely amazing experience from that front too. Technology you don't even think of.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why Disney didn't do that until now, but I think that was a great move on Holland's part.
I'm guessing they had designed them and then they didn't like think of it.
Yeah.
And they're like just one of the things that didn't happen. And then like Holland had more experience, you know, and further back in time with cruising.
Right.
And so they were just like, oh, this is the thing we need because we've gotten guest complaints about this.
Right.
Think about it, as a company, it's like, oh, you know, we haven't been in business long enough in cruising to know that this is like an essential piece of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing I thought might be possible is Mickey's salary is just too high. Like his salary expectations for Mickey at this point, you know, with all the work experience that he has, is really demanding. That they couldn't afford to also get the nice engines.
It's true.
And afford Mickey on board.
It's almost weird because Disney's considered more of a. I mean, Holland's luxury too, but it's like Disney's like luxury,
Right,
line, and it's
right.
much more expensive.
Yeah, to pay for
they should
Mickey,
have had
yeah.
this for years. They should have, you know, whether it be part of the Azapods, I think is a huge component, but there's also probably some like stabilization stuff. They use these extra fins in the water. That I'm guessing all the ships have that as well. But to kind of go on your point, the waves we felt at Alaska, felt versus saw, we saw incredible waves. There were times where we were pitching and yawing and heaving and the whole thing. Like the ship was moving in all, is it like 6 axes technically? Because the ship can go in a different direction.
Right.
It's very intense in some of those waves, but none of us felt like, oh no, like because I felt seasickness before, and it is not fun. You cannot make it stop. Yeah. But yeah, I never felt it, and we had very intense seas.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as opposed to having to pay for Mickey's Mick Mansion in Mississippi, because he's got a Mick Mansion in Mississippi. Excuse me. So yeah, it was extremely smooth. I'm totally on board with you there. The food you touched on. Let's talk further about that. What did you think of the food overall? How did that change over the course of the cruise? Because I know there were some shifts there. And overall, what was your takeaway on the food front?
I really enjoyed the food. I really did. I think that overall, Holland's got a really good like food level, right? If you're like, okay, like number one food I've ever had in my whole life's a 10, and food that's inedible that I can't eat that I've had before and it's awful is a 0. It maintained a nice 7. There were times where it was like I can't eat that, and there were times where like this is amazing, right? So it had these ebbs and flows, as Disney does, where it's like it has the ebbs and flows. The ahi tuna tower, it's just like, oh my gosh, best thing ever. And the scallops, best thing ever. And then you have other things on Disney, which is the same thing. It has these troughs and peaks. I felt like on Holland, though, even though Disney, I think, has better individual items. I think that for me personally, there are items at Disney which are better than anything I tried on Holland. Right. That's me.
Yep.
I feel like overall the food was better on Holland in terms of just a general. So it's like the salad. I don't know what they did to that salad. I was eating them up because I was loving every second of those. Right. But there was a lot of other food, a lot of fish, a lot of meats that were incredible. But yeah, overall I really loved it.
So I agree generally. I think the peaks were higher on particular points on Disney ships. There are some things I'm just like amazing. I would love to get that in other places. It's just so good. Valleys, I think, were definitely, in my opinion, substantially lower on Disney ships too. Where I don't know if I had the experience here, like I can't eat that, but it's like, I don't really want to. Whereas there's some on Disney where I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot do this. At least me personally. Okay, the mushroom thing. Which, you're right. You're right. There was the one. Was that spinach or mushroom? It was.
I don't remember what it was.
Yes, it was on my plate at one point. I said, "Oh, Mike's put some of his items on my plate for me to try as well." And I tried that, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can." Okay, so you're right. That was one with Holland. I just was not in the neighborhood for that. But you touched on an interesting point there when it comes to food, and I think this piece is actually kind of a big deal around. And I do think generally, Holland was good and consistent. I like their consistent good level. If you ask me to pick one, I think consistent good is preferable to great peaks, low peaks, and consistently good, but I don't know if it's consistently good. But one thing that stood out to me from the Holland perspective, and one reason why I would maybe lean in that direction, is the things that were consistently good with Holland were also consistently attainable. You could get the salad all the time, just going to Lido and make it yourself and change it up any way you want it. And you're not in the mood for the Italian anymore, so you get the Asian. I always got the Asian style. And I got the Italian as well, though, I will say. There were a couple others I tried. And you were done with the salmon in your salad. You want to get the chicken instead. Or, they'd always be changing up the variety of the menu of that salad. But you could always get the salad. It was like lunch and dinner every day. I wanted it for breakfast some days, so it wasn't that easily obtainable. But the salad, which was maybe our number one, was just always available.
There was that fish, too. It was one of the later days. There was this really good fish we had. It's okay.
Right. Which was, I felt like it happened a good few days as well. Maybe it was the fish and chips / the fried fish / It's funny, they kept renaming it, but it was always the same fish. I guess it was the side that changed, so they renamed the whole dish. fried seafood, and I'm like, pretty sure it's just the fish still, but it's good. It's good.
Really
it just
good.
seems to change the name for some reason. It doesn't change the dish. Not really how that works. Sprinkle some water on it, see what happens.
That's funny.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say overall, easily attainable great food is a big deal. Whereas like ahi tuna tower is probably one of those ones that stands out. But if you want that every night, you got to pre-order it every night. You can't really change your mind on that, or you just feel bad throwing it out. And if you change your mind throughout, you want it later on, too late, more or less. So, and if you don't want the salad on any given day, you just go to a different counter. I mean, having quality food at Lido, and I think generally Lido was where we wanted to eat. We went to the dining room a few times, and we just decided that like Lido food is just as good. And to me, that is a huge perk. That is maybe something you can underestimate, because when you go to the quick serve on the Disney ships, if you ask me, they just didn't have anywhere near the same level of amazing quality. You wouldn't get your ahi tuna towers and those sorts of things, that amazing Star Wars dessert at the quick serve on Disney. You have to go to table service dining, which is going to take up a certain amount of time. You have to make sure you plan on the particular evening to be there for it. You can only get it on that one evening, etc. Whereas when the peak stuff is in the quick serve, makes it a lot more accessible and just more frequently more enjoyable.
I have actually never tried dinner in the main dining room, but I know exactly what you mean in terms of lunch items and breakfast items, because you're right. It is breakfast, I think, is actually very similar, but lunch and things like that, there are some differences there. But I think I haven't tried dinner on Disney. I want to try the dinner at Disney.
The quick serve.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
At some point.
But it's hard to, because you
don't want to miss the dinner,
right? And you tried the breakfast and lunch, and you're like, Whereas, I guess breakfast on Holland it wasn't my favorite part. No. It wasn't my favorite part. I started to go for the custom builds because those were the best things. The crepes. Oh, yeah. And then your custom built omelet. Those were my two, really but good. Then you're waiting for that. But the lunches, I think, made us feel that dinner would be good too. Perhaps that's what it was. So there's that. So it sounds like in terms of food, and they're on a similar page there, and you can get an idea of kind of where we're at on that front. Now, the other thing we touched on here is, what do you think was the best feature that was going for Holland? What was the best part?
For me, I'm going to say it was the size of the ship, right? That I think was something that it's hard to change, obviously, and it's hard to find elsewhere because you're going to pay an extreme premium usually for a ship that size.
Right.
That I think was probably one of the best things going for it. Was the size, number of people. I
like that. So I would have said amenities, which I think may also be based on the size of the ship. I liked how they had so many elevators. There was never a line for elevators. I loved how they had so many hot tubs. We could almost always get in the hot tub. And those are some of my favorite things, well, I don't know about elevators, but hot tub's one of my favorite things to do on board. And I love to just ride the elevator up and down. It's one of my favorite things on board. But on this one, it was worthwhile because you had the ocean view elevators.
Nice.
There's something to be said for that. But otherwise, I'll just like press all the buttons and just go ding, ding,
never did
ding.
that.
Yeah, just for fun. No, I didn't do that.
But the pool was indoor.
Right. The two pools, the one indoor, one outdoor.
Yes.
And there was no like kids. But let's talk about the size of the ship. There were a couple kids. But it was just a lot quieter. It was a lot more peaceful. And there were a lot more areas for adults to enjoy specifically.
Yes.
So let's talk about that. Smaller size ship. And what is it about the smaller size ship? Is that it? Is it the amenities? Is it the low crowds, how we could always get in the hot tub? What makes a small ship impressive to you?
It must have been the fact that everything was always available. Like, as you said it perfectly with the line, because if you've been on a Disney cruise before, you know that everybody's basically on the same schedule.
Right.
You're either going to dinner at whatever time it is, or you're going to the show.
Right.
And then you flip. And, it works for Disney, but it makes this crush of people right at the exit of dinner. Not usually. It's usually the exit of the theater or the entrance of the theater. It's just this crush. And that's one of the things that I think was so interesting about the layout of Holland, especially the eurodam. There was never really a crush of people, not even leaving the ship. Like, I can't tell you how many times there's been just like a massive crowd on the Disney ship, wherever it is. It could be in the lobby during picture time. It could be as you disembark at Castaway Cay. Not usually that bad. Sometimes coming on board. MSC had a lot of people. Same issue.
Right.
Had a lot of people trying to come into the ship at the same time. A lot of people congregating. But there was none of that. I can't remember any. Maybe you can.
Yeah.
I can't remember any of this just giant crunch of people. And it just felt very relaxing because of it.
Oh, I think you have a good point. And I think maybe that ties into the same category as the amenities. Perhaps part of the reason they were so available is not because they have so many more amenities. And I do think they had more hot tubs and things like that. But also because there were so many less people is because the ship was smaller. There weren't so many crowds on such things. So more amenities per person because the head count is lower.
Yep.
And I think another thing, though, on that front that speaks to just being well managed. So, of course, there's the lower head count, but there's also it being well managed. And another thing that speaks to that really well was the umbrellas. We got off the ship in Ketchikan, and we're like, oh, man, we should have brought some umbrellas. Or we're like, we can't bring umbrellas in our luggage, too big, whatever. Holland is literally handing out at the gate, like, thought through where we already were mentally. It was like, here you go, exactly what you were thinking of. And it's just those sorts of things with Holland really impressed me.
Yeah. Yeah. Customer service.
Yeah. Customer service was really, really well done. I think that, again, we've both been on a couple of different cruise lines. I think that some do it better than others, but I just felt like Holland did it really well.
I agree.
So I got to give them that. In terms of the opposite of that, what are they missing, you think? One of the biggest features that maybe Holland could have gotten a lot better, whether it was on this particular cruise, or you think that maybe in general Holland doesn't do quite as well?
Quite as well as, I'm going to say, give Disney as the example, and Royal, actually. Royal's a good example, too, but this is not their clientele.
Right.
Were some of the other activities to do during the day, it was very relaxing. I love the fact that Disney's got, like, characters going, even though sometimes it gets a little crazy. They got characters going. They've got some game show going. The whole family can play all that. And Holland did have some of that, but not as much.
Right.
You know, that's the same level. On the Royal side, the Flow Rider, or on like Norwegian, you got the golf cart, or not the golf carts, the go-karts going around. So those kind of things are not the clientele of Holland. That's not why you took Holland. And Holland's much less expensive, probably because they don't have those things.
Right.
But I enjoyed that part of it too. It just really depends on where you're going and what you're looking for out of where you're going. Right, so I feel like that was a perfect cruise for Alaska because all you want to do is go out there and whale watch.
Right,
that's all.
Even
I
when you're
to
at
do.
sea, you just want to look outside.
And they had the environmentalists going like all the time on your little navigator. When is the environmentalist out there? Oh, let's go see him, and we talked to him, and it was fun. Yeah, they did a lot of things right for sure.
Yeah, and I think we should talk about that route. We'll dive further into that in 1 second. But my response to that, in terms of something that I felt that Holland really didn't do quite as well as I would have expected / compared to other cruises I've been on, was the stage shows. And when I say it, you're probably going to relate.
Oh my gosh.
It's just not my sort of stage show. And I think maybe what it was it just didn't feel as much of a production. It didn't feel as involved. There wasn't as much focus or effort on it. And they weren't as large, therefore. Or unique, like MSC for me. The first one.
I like the first one.
The first one was, the first one, I mean, I thought the first one was good. I feel like I've seen better, but it was good. I'd watch the first one. It was something similar again. It
wasn't like a story.
Right. But it was still well done. Like lots of dancing, lots of actors or dancers involved. But then after that, at least in my opinion, like for example, the BBC one, I was like, oh, I'm excited to see this. I was really excited to see it. I think what it was the video silent, and then there were two instrumentalists, like one violinist and one other instrument playing alongside, and I'm like, this really wasn't what I was expecting on this one.
I think that was it. Either they had a little bit of background talking or something, but it just did not go. It would have actually been better for them to actually just play the movie, just play it right there on that big screen,
I think that's
so we
fair.
could all enjoy whatever it's called,
Right.
Earth or World or whatever it was.
Yeah.
It's a great show. I've seen parts of it before. Really cool. Like it a lot. But for them to cut out basically most of the music and just have some musicians on stage who I'm sure they were doing great, but without the accompaniment, it left you wanting.
Right. It was such a small sound comparatively to the whole band.
Yeah.
Okay, so that covers that piece. If you're big on the stage shows, they might not have that for you, but we felt like a lot of the features made it pretty worthwhile based on what we're saying thus far.
Yeah, I think actually I was about to say MSC beat that in sort of stage shows. Your MSC cruise was different than mine in terms of stage shows, but I didn't love a lot of the ones at MSC, but I felt like they were better than the BBC thing.
Right.
That was awful.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can see in my videos clips of the MSC shows that I saw. It was definitely much larger productions.
Yeah, they were.
Than this sort of thing. And yes, I thought they were more entertaining as well. I also liked the foreign aspect. And, Holland is a Holland cruise line, right? It's a Netherlands brand. So they could always do foreign shows as well, and that could be interesting. But overall, fantastic experience. Now, I want to talk about the route as well. We just touched on that in terms of I don't even remember what it was called, the inner coastline or whatever it was. I think some people we'd spoken to said they specifically took this cruise because of the route that we went on, being able to go in like the icy point or the Glacier Bay, those kinds of things. And as we touched on, right, less activities, but you weren't even worried about that most of the time because you want to just get out there, look for the whales, see the mountains and the glaciers and all that you're passing as you go. I felt like they did an amazing job with the route and the itinerary, just all the stops we had a chance to see, like the order in which they were done. I would say being able to drive through. They sat 15 minutes on this side, 15 minutes on that side.
Glacier
So
Bay.
people who are busy or in the restroom, whatever it might be, has a chance to see it from whichever side they're on. I thought it was all very well executed, very well thought through, and well managed. So definitely loved that route and itinerary. Your thoughts on it, and maybe how it compares to some of the other ones you've heard about, seen, and yeah.
Fully agree. I thought that it was an amazing itinerary, and I'm so glad we did the Glacier Bay. The Glacier Bay is apparently the thing that you got to do.
Right.
We didn't get a chance to go to someplace like Skagway, things like that. We didn't get a chance to go there as many other cruise lines do, but that's like more standard Alaska. And I do look forward to getting back to Alaska and doing some different routes.
Right.
But I think one of the negatives, I agree with everything you said, but one of the negatives here is the fact that they had to leave some of the ports really early.
Right.
So it was like I think Ketchikan was the one they left at 11 something. Left at like 11:30, and then you would get in Victoria, British Columbia at like 8 something.
Yes.
And it was like that I wish was different.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much they can do about that because it's a certain distance and you can only go so fast, and
Yeah.
that's what you got.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that I wish was different.
Right.
And maybe if they had put like Skagway in the middle, I don't know what they could have done, but yeah, that was a little too short in some of the ports.
It was quick, and I wonder if maybe even just adding days to the cruise might fix that. But on the flip side, do you want to, it was perfectly 7 days, and you're like timing your weekends and your time
Right.
off work, so there's something to be said for that.
Yep.
Now, you touched on the biggest example, if you ask me, which would be Canada, which we had such a brief visit in.
Yeah.
But I was so glad we had a chance to see it.
Me too.
And I don't know if all Alaskan cruises necessarily stop in Canada. Probably a good chunk of them do.
I think that a lot of them leave from Vancouver.
Oh, right. Most of them leave from Vancouver, so they have different ports. Start at a different country than they ended in, right?
Not all of
most
them,
common.
though. They vary.
Right,
There are tons of different cruises that do Alaska for sure.
But this one happened to Seattle. What was your thoughts on that short stopover at night in Canada, and how did you feel about departing out of Seattle and coming back into Seattle as opposed to Canada now that you've had a chance to experience Canada for a very brief period?
Very brief period. I really loved Canada. Yeah. I loved it. Loved walking around. Loved seeing the people. Yeah. Everything there was just so clean. To redo that
hopefully means good. I mean, hopefully it means people are entertained. Because stop recording there. So running it back, if you missed that last part, was thoughts regarding the short visit in Canada, arriving in Canada, but departing to and from Seattle, and your thoughts on potentially cruises out of Canada versus in and out of Seattle for future Alaskan cruises overall.
Yeah, no, I really loved Victoria, British Columbia. Really did. I thought it was beautiful. Felt very welcome, very clean. I really enjoyed walking around, especially at night. I was thinking to myself, there's not going to be anything to see because it's all dark. There's all the lights gone. Yeah. But as much as I would have liked to take more pictures, because the light and pictures.
Yeah, right.
We were there at night. I would definitely go back. I would definitely recommend it. I really enjoyed it. We left from Seattle, which I thought was great experience. But if we were to leave from a different port, a Canadian port next time, I would be very comfortable with that too. I think that there's flexibility there. So I wouldn't let the port that I depart from determine where I go to Alaska. Right. So if they said, okay, you want a whole new itinerary, but you got to leave out of Vancouver, I'd be like, Vancouver, here we come.
Right. If that's the route you want,
it's all about the route.
Right.
It's like I want to go to these places, and exactly.
I think that's totally fair. Now, I would like to spend more time in the future at stops like Victoria, especially. I mean, to be fair though, I'm glad we spent more time at all the Alaskan stops than Victoria, because I feel like Victoria might also be easier to get back to.
Yes.
That being said, I would love to spend more time in a place like Victoria, and this was my first experience in Canada as well, as you've probably seen in some of my international travel as well. I don't go out a lot at night in a lot of foreign countries. My first time in the country. But I'm so glad we had a chance to experience a couple hours there. And I can only imagine how much more we would have been able to see and experience during the day with some of those businesses open, for example, on the dock.
Yes.
Some of those restaurants looked really cool. And I'm like, oh, it's closed.
I know. I know.
That being said, being on a cruise, we also had all of our food, included. So it's kind of harder to get yourself to buy the food at the port when you will just get, included food on board, in my opinion, if you're coming from that, spend conscious perspective. But yeah, overall, really, really glad we had that stop and happy with the itinerary overall. Definitely would do it again. So I think that addresses a huge majority of everything we want to touch base on. Were there any other big points that perhaps we didn't cover that you wanted to speak to? We talked about shows, talked about food, talked about the itinerary. Overall, since we've re-reviewed, overall, it's still a top tier for you. Would you, this is an interesting question. Would you take Holland America Line again, A, to go to a place like Alaska, but B, given that there wasn't as much entertainment, to go to some other destinations, and how would you pick it? So, for example, Holland America Line going to your Bahamas versus, I don't know, Holland America Line, I think they go in Europe as well, but I don't know why they'd call it Holland America Line, and it goes in Europe. Maybe
I think it's part of Carnival, and it's meant as a it's for certain. It's meant to do certain things. Audience, right? They have an audience in mind. Okay. They have their core audience in mind. But yes, to answer your question, I would definitely go on Holland again.
Yeah.
I was so impressed not only with the service, with the size of the ship, the food, and I would use it as the destination go-to.
Right.
Disney, and I love Disney. Don't get me wrong, but it's very expensive.
Yeah.
And they don't have as many ships. They don't go to as many places. And when you're there, you want to spend as much time as you can on the ship.
Right.
Because that's what you're there for.
Right.
When you go on one of these other ships, we tried MSC, I tried Royal, now we've tried Holland. I would take one of these other ships that's far less expensive. I still enjoy it, still get some good food. Holland is a good example here. And then go and spend as much time as possible into these destinations that they talk about. So when I think about European cruises, I saw you do it, and that was amazing. I want to do something like that.
Yeah.
I think about, okay, which ship can get me there in the most comfort and best food and lowest price possible so that I can go and enjoy every minute and maybe spend more money at the destinations and do these excursions and specialty dining, which I'm thinking about, right? So for me, if you're asking me like, okay, if you had to pick one ship to go to one of these foreign destinations or destinations you've never been to before, I would pick Holland or Royal, a couple other lines that I want to try as well, but definitely Holland would be up there for sure.
Cool. I have to agree as well. I think minus the entertainment piece, which I also don't mind sitting back and relaxing. I think from a organized and managed perspective, I think from a cost perspective and a consideration perspective, amenity perspective, yes. I mean, it's definitely going to be up there in terms of cruise lines for me. So overall, again, fantastic experience.
I do want to say that I still want to go on Disney cruising. Like I still love it, and it's the fact that you feel different type of relaxation. But you can go on multiple cruises with these other lines for the same cost.
Right.
And that to me, even though I love Disney cruising this much, I love traveling even more.
Right.
And I want to do multiple traveling with the same amount of money.
Right.
That's why. It's not that, oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. It's like I want to go to these places and experience these things at the best price possible.
Yeah, you have to consider the cost of these cruises and the cost of your adventure overall, right? Let's just say instead of, 2 weeks, all you have to worry about is like, let's call it $6,000. And would you rather take, a week or a 2-week Disney cruise, or would you rather be able to spend like a month and see twice as many countries in Europe?
Spend it over the course of the year.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you do a year-long cruise.
No, I'm saying
$6,000.
you do it like multiple weeks over the course of a year.
Oh, right.
Rather than just like a 2-weeker.
Right. If you have that, yeah. Or I'm saying like if you weren't working, you were retired or whatever it is, your funds go that much further. So
yeah, that's true.
Something to be said for that.
It was an amazing adventure. I would definitely go again, and I'd highly recommend Alaska to everyone and anyone. I think any age group would enjoy Alaska. If you love nature, you love just kind of being there and having a great family to go with, friends to go with, it really makes it amazing. Well, actually, one thing I do want to touch on.
Yeah.
On MSC and Disney and Royal, others that I've been on, large groups get together and it's a lot of fun. I felt like on Holland, there were more people who were like connecting to each other.
Right.
That was really interesting. I don't know if you'd noticed that too. Like we talked to a lot of great people on board. We met new friends. We played games with different friends as we were going around there. That was a lot of fun and kind of unique.
Yeah.
For Holland. So I'm not saying like solo traveler, but maybe you want to interact with other people. This is that opportunity.
Yeah. I think that's a very interesting point. And I feel like maybe I had more of the interacting type experience MSC Europe, and maybe that's a European thing.
Probably
and
is.
being the American, people are like, oh, look, American on board. You want to chat with a weird solo American traveling. But yes, I mean, comparatively to some of the Disney cruises, 100%, a lot more opportunity to learn, interact, and just chat with other guests. So that was really cool indeed. We also didn't talk too much when it comes to Alaska, but I think you have a pretty good idea overall in terms of we both absolutely loved Alaska, would love to go back to Alaska, and it's definitely high on that destination list. I mean, I'm not one that generally goes to chilly destinations, but again, definitely just an amazing place. I think a lot of the different stops we loved. I loved the Totem stop. That was probably up there for me. And then I think it was Icy Strait. We also loved. I'm not 100% sure, but I think we did because the gondolas were so much fun, which we call gondolas. I don't know if they call gondolas.
One question. Were you cold, like super cold at any point during the cruise?
It's a good point. Yeah. Thinking back on it, I don't really think I was. You know what? There were I think particularly when we were on board, I think going down Glacier Bay was all the gloves and 3 layers. But you don't even remember the cold because it was such an amazing experience. Yeah. Whereas I remember the cold in Europe. I remember being hailed on in Germany. But that was just, all the fun of it. And I got the good weather in Ireland. Ireland was a great experience overall. So they were saving the bad weather for when I got to the mainland Europe. They're like, come back to Ireland. And then come get cold in Germany. So yeah, I would say it was chilly, but yeah, it wasn't the memorable part because it was just so amazing that you forget how chilly it was because it was just a beautiful place.
Would you go back to Glacier Bay?
Yes.
So I know that you and I both want to do like different things now. We don't
Right.
want to do too many repeats. But when you think about repeats of going to like a Caribbean destination versus repeat going to Glacier Bay.
Yeah. I think that, first of all, that's a great question. And I think for me, that's an easy one where I'd much rather go back to Glacier Bay, and I'd much rather go back to Alaska in general. And that's primarily, there's a variety of factors. One being we've done the Bahamas many times. And two is just, yes, like even with the chilliness, like there's so much to see. It's like a holistic experience, like a take on the world in a different way. And you're almost like looking at it externally, taking in just, wow, like this is our Earth sort of thing, you know, due to the nature, due to the salmon experience. That was amazing to see the salmon. And especially reflecting on the salmon and like that lifespan and all that, to me was just like, wow, you know, like how the world works. We're so fortunate. So that was maybe one of the big reasons too for me why that was just such an incredible place and why I would pick Alaska over Bahamas if I'm looking to do a repeat sort of thing. How about yourself? I
feel exactly the same way. Very connected to nature.
Right.
Very like, this is our planet. You know, this is Mother Nature in action. This is just, it was almost an emotional experience because you feel like you are reminded of like what it takes for this planet to be as amazing as it is for all of us.
Right.
It's the nature part got me. It really did. I loved it.
Yeah, that's something I think unlike anything I'd experienced before, and definitely a big reason for me to want to go back to Alaska. So would love to try new destinations, but I'm sure we'll be back to Alaska as well.
100%.
So this was fantastic to get to have a better understanding of your take on the cruise. Thank you for taking the time to do so, Mike. And thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of the fun with us. You know, again, really enjoy sharing different perspectives with you. And I think this is a fun format, you know, just be able to sit and chat and share our views on different things. So thinking through what we might want to see more of, feel free to let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you like this style? And what topics do you want to hear us address? You know, I've been thinking about a couple different things. I might spin this monkey on its head. What do you call it? Spin the pig on the tail? I don't know. Might try something totally funky and talk about some other topics which have come to mind. So you'll see if that happens. But feel free to let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button if you liked it. And don't forget to bring that positivity, that silver lining to your day and to your life. And one way you can do that is by hitting the subscribe button and ringing the bell to stay informed of all the positive vibes headed your way. Right here with Dave K and the new DaveCasts. And we'll see how that continues in the future. TBD. But I like the vibe. I think it's fun.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks so much for being a part of it. And until next time, play on. Peace.